This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all the news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
Hey, and I'm Anthony.
We're back here on a Wednesday, leading you into your day. Starting off here bright and early in the morning. It's 7:14. I'm still a little tired. I kind of struggled getting up this morning. Usually I don't. But, I mean, I know you work, like, literally the worst hours possible. So I don't know how you do it.
Last night I didn't. No, last night's not the day I do it. Tomorrow's the day I do it. Tomorrow's the day where I work from 6:30 p.m. to basically 2:30 a.m. And then I come here at 7 o'clock. So that's always awesome and fun.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. I'm a pretty busy guy myself. If I get 7 hours, then
right.
I had a good night. But, I mean, you're getting like 4 or 5 sometimes. And
last time I didn't.
Grinding through on a normal day-to-day basis.
Last time I didn't even sleep. I just came here. I was like, all right, that's fine. Let's just take some caffeine. Let's just kind of power through college style. Like, yeah, that's all that was.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, buddy. I give you a lot of credit for that, because I would be running on literally adrenaline, and I wouldn't really have much. I mean, right now I don't really have much, but
sure,
going to grind through. I got 3 shows to do today, but this is, of course, number 1, the sports show. We're not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it. We're going to be leading off here, first of all, with boxing, MMA, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of storylines which we'll get to about Mayweather and McGregor. But first, the former UFC heavyweight champion, and now I guess you can say WWE superstar,
right,
Brock Lesnar, has officially retired from mixed martial arts. He's, of course, facing a year-long ban after his positive, I guess you say, doping test.
Yeah.
After UFC 200 and his victory against Mark Hunt, he has not appeared in the octagon since, and he has basically a year suspension, so he's like, I'm 39 years old. I'm just going to officially retire now. And honestly, I guess we all saw this coming. We all knew it was going to happen. He had one big last raw fight against Mark Hunt to earn some money, to sell some more pay-per-views, because it's UFC 200, so you have the whole round number thing, the biggest fight card there is, and then obviously that got taken out of proportion because you had Johnny Bones Jones against Daniel Cormier, and then that fight didn't go through because of a bad test. So it didn't really live up to the hype, but nevertheless, Lesnar did appear on that to try and sell one last pay-per-view, and of course they did. They sold a lot of money on it, but so Lesnar has officially retired from MMA. So do you think this will give him, now that he's got this out of the way, do you think he'll be appearing more with Vince McMahon in WWE? Because I guess you can say now, he really only appears at the 4 or 5 major build-ups to the pay-per-views. You have Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. With the exception of those pay-per-views, you don't really see him all year long. So you think he'll appear more now?
No, because he's still the guy that basically is the kind of attraction, kind of sense where he's one of the few guys that you can just say his name and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, he's still name brand kind of thing, right? Like Undertaker, Goldberg, whatever. But like, all those guys are older, and I guess so is Brock Lesnar. But he doesn't have to be, right? You can do the stuff like you do with The Rock and stuff like that, to where it's like, okay, cool, he's going to come every now and then, and he doesn't have to be the guy that shows up on every Raw and every SmackDown, every pay-per-view, and just kind of grinds through everything, 24 hours a day. It's just like, okay, we're going to throw him in every now and then on Raw. We're going to throw him every few pay-per-views. And it's just like, when you see him, it matters kind of thing. Like, he doesn't have to be all around doing everything all the time, going 24 hours a day. I mean, you kind of forget the dude's, 39 years old. Like, he's been doing it, especially in wrestling, since 2005, 2004, something like that. Something around that time. He's been going off and on, I guess. Since then, he's been in the public eye. And, now that he's not going to be in UFC, which I actually don't believe either, because he did this before, didn't he? Like, didn't he go on ESPN with Michelle Beadle like a year or 2 years ago, something like that? And she was just like, all right, cool, which one are you doing, UFC or MMA or WWE? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do WWE because it's simpler, it's easier on my body, like I don't have to do it as much, stuff like that. I can do it when I want. And then he still came back to 200. Like, he still went back when Dana White was like, hey, can you do this one more time? He's like, yeah, cool. Took all the, steroids he wanted to and got suspended, but still got a huge payday from it. So I don't doubt that UFC 250 or whatever, like if they needed another kind of like, hey, do you want to come back? He wouldn't do it again. Like he said, he was retired before. He'll come back again if need be, just for that really, really big, like, oh my God, he's coming back fight. Exactly.
That's what happened with 200. He got that one big last payday.
Yeah.
That's the only reason he came back. So as far as will he be back or not, I mean, I don't know. There's always a chance. Never say never, but
sure.
And then I agree with what you said about the whole WWE thing. I think it takes away from the character of Brock Lesnar if people are seeing him every single week.
Right.
Like, that's what makes The Undertaker so good now, Goldberg now, Lesnar now, is you only see them doing one promo maybe a month on Raw and then fighting at the pay-per-view. So I think that's what makes them so good. So I don't expect Lesnar to do too much. He's already getting a lot of money from Vince McMahon and WWE, and he already has a lot of money saved up during his career. So it's not like he needs to appear much, and now he has Paul Heyman really doing all of his talking for him, so he kind of just stands there and bounces around back and forth. And
he just has to look menacing,
Exactly. So he has a pretty easy role, but he's officially retired, as of now, from MMA, facing his 1-year suspension. So that transition just still in the world of fighting. And quite honestly, I'm kind of tired about talking about this, but Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. So the last couple of days we've had some reports going on that while McGregor is in Vegas, because he's having to be in Vegas right now to talk about his actions during a UFC press conference last month. He's with like the Nevada State Commission and everything. So he's handling that, and then he's basically on Twitter talking about, I'm here, Floyd, because Mayweather lives in Las Vegas, and then Mayweather's at the Warriors and Thunder game, and he's talking to people about how we're really, really close. And then you have Dana White going on and saying that there's like nothing even close to being done right now. Floyd Mayweather's talking about how he's happily retired on Instagram, and before that he's saying if Conor McGregor wants to fight me, then get your stuff done with the UFC and have your people meet with mine. And it's literally just a back and forth. And quite honestly, I don't believe anything that these guys say.
Right.
Because if Floyd Mayweather was literally completely happily retired, like he said on Instagram yesterday, he would not be talking about fighting Conor McGregor still. Quite honestly, I'm tired of talking about it. Here's what I want to happen. I want them both to just come out and say, yes, I want to fight you. Let's just work out however much money we're each going to get, because you're going to get a lot of money for this. So you're probably going to get an even bigger buildup than Mayweather-Pacquiao was at this point right now. So you're going to both get paid out. So why don't you just both come out and say, yes, I want to fight you. Let's work something out and just get it done. Seriously, like this is what it's come to now. I like it's literally like one person says this, and then he retaliates, and then a month later we don't hear anything, and then one person says this, and then the other retaliates, and then a month later the same thing happens. It's like, why don't you guys just come out and finally get something done? I'm tired of talking about it.
First rule of negotiation, never do it against yourself. Never basically come out and say, like, I'm good at it. Basically make it a thing. Make it a competition. That's what they're doing. They're both basically... They both probably want to face each other because for two different reasons. One, Mayweather, his legacy or whatever you want to call it is intact. He's one of the best boxers of all time. Whether or not you like him as a person, that's a totally different thing. He can be a terrible human being and also a great fighter. We've had people who are great athletes, terrible people. OJ. But...
he didn't do it.
Allegedly. Actually, there are hours.
I'm just kidding.
There's generally like 8 hours worth of evidence that he probably did it that you can watch either on FX
he
or on ESPN.
He wrote a book saying how he would do
it. He wrote yes, that too. Which, God, that's so strange. But, you can be both things. You can be a great athlete and a terrible human being. But he's 49-0, which still ties him for Rocky Marciano. And this would be the 50th win if he gets it.
But how much? But, I get that. But it'd basically be like... Because... if this fight were to happen in boxing, I would give McGregor absolutely no chance.
Sure, right.
Like, yeah, he'd go to 50-0 and be the first one to do that. But it's like, okay, you did it against not the top competitor. You know what I mean? You did it against, like, Basically like a throw-in fight to get to 15-0.
Yeah, but what do you want him to do? Like do you want him to face like some dude in his prime? Like you don't want to come back and face Oscar De La Hoya in his prime? Like what do you want him to do? Like he can only do what he can right now.
This is the only fight that people want to see. So
yeah.
I get what you're saying, but it's like, you know.
And the other thing is whether or not this is a great boxing match or not. So many people, myself included. Well, maybe I wouldn't buy it, but I would go to someone's house who did buy it and like chip in or whatever. But like, I would absolutely watch the fight.
Everyone will watch
for no other reason. It's just like, oh, this is going to be entertaining. Now, with all that being said, the trash talk next level for McGregor. He is the best in the sport, in any sport at it, and he will do a great job. Now, there will be lines crossed that are uncomfortable, and you don't want to get there, and that's going to be bad. And we're going to talk about that probably at some point when that happens. It's like, oh, did he go too far by saying da-da-da? But as far as like actually money-wise selling the fight, because that's the other part of McGregor. Like I talked about Mayweather and how he basically, you know, this is his legacy, 50th fight. Now he's, you know, historically the best fighter of all time. Although the funny thing I always say is that like, yeah, he's 49-0, but also we won a bronze medal at the Olympics, which means he actually has lost one time in a professional fight. But he's someone who will have that to his legacy. To where McGregor, he's someone that, you know, if he loses, he loses. Fine. He lost to Nate Diaz. That didn't matter. He came back and beat him later on. A loss isn't going to kill McGregor, but him being in the fight and him being able to make God knows how much money, it's just going to help him out, win, lose, or draw. It doesn't matter.
He'd have nothing to lose because he's stepping into a boxing ring, which is, I guess you could say a little bit in his element, but totally away from what mixed martial arts does. You have kickboxing, you have submission, ground game, everything. So it's totally out of his element. He's going to be getting, I don't know, he's demanding $100 million. I'm sure he'd get somewhere between 50 to 100 if this thing's to happen. In the UFC, the biggest payday he's gotten is, I think, between 2 and 3.
I think it was 3, yeah. I think
so
he'd
be literally going out of this world, getting rich from this one fight compared to everything he's... You could add up all his fights in MMA combined, and it wouldn't even touch what he would get in this fight. And so he'd have nothing to lose. And
Dana White's saying, you know, they're not close. Okay, fine. Yeah, of course Dana's going to say that because technically McGregor's still under contract, right? He's still under contract with UFC for, I think, 4 more fights. I think Dana said it's still for 4 more fights. So whatever he does, fighting, be it in the UFC or just this kind of boxing, whatever you want to call it, match, UFC is going to want a cut of it, right? Like, you're not going to sign...
Dana White would get something.
Yeah, like, you're not going to have the biggest guy in your sport now that Ronda Rousey's not basically Ronda Rousey anymore and John Jones can't basically stay clean. Like, you basically have the biggest star in your sport. If he's going to be in any kind of situation, you want to have a piece of that. Be a big piece or a small piece. You want to at least be in the game and have a portion of that. So by him saying it's not close, it's probably him saying that, like, we don't like this deal so far. We want to have a bigger portion of it.
So last month, White came out and said that, why don't we do this? Like, each of you guys get $25 million, and then we get this thing going. And Mayweather laughed. He goes, "You're a bleeping comedian." Obviously, I mean, $25 million to Floyd Mayweather is literally like $100 to you and I. Like, it's not that it's nothing, but I mean, it's totally.
Did he make
not Floyd Mayweather money?
Did he make like $300 million off of the last one, off of Pacquiao?
I'm not sure of the specifics, but
it was some stupid amount.
Both those guys, like, after the fight, like, hugged it out, and then I'm sure they're whispering to themselves, like, we just made like a ton of money from this. Like, thank you, basically. You know what I mean? Basically thanking. And that's what happened here. That's what would happen here. After the fight, they'd basically like hug it out, like, oh yeah, great fight. And it's like, we just cashed out because of you and I. You know what I mean? So they're both like demanding basically $100 million. But then you have to throw in something with Dana White and UFC, and I mean, there's not a whole lot of money to go around. So something's got to give. But do you think this will actually happen?
I kind of do, actually. I think the thing is, before, like, it may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen in a month from now. It may happen 3 years from now. But I think it actually probably will at some point, just because the money potentially on the table for both of them is so insane and so massive that they just have to try it. And like I said, if it was something where it's like, oh, we're going to do MMA, then no, there's no chance, because Mayweather would be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to die in the ring because McGregor wants to choke me for like 7 seconds longer.
The fight would end in like 20 seconds.
Yeah. But because it's a boxing match and McGregor seems unafraid of anything, he would fight a bear. Like, I think he would just be like, all right, cool, let's do this. And then, maybe he loses in a couple of rounds or whatever because, 5 degrees difference of basically you and I getting in there. Like, he at least has some training, but at the same time, it's not a world-class fighter. It's some guy who has an idea of what he's doing, but will still get, destroyed by Mayweather, who does this professionally for a living. I do think at some point it does happen, though.
We seem to never think that Pacquiao and Mayweather were going to fight. Because
right. That's
it was like, oh, that's the next big fight. It's got to happen, and then we'll do this kind of blood test, do this Olympic style test, and then it never fell through.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, 2 years later, comes out, and it's like, oh, they're gonna fight, and it's because what you just said. The money eventually got to a point where we can't turn this down.
Yeah.
We have to do it. The same thing is going to happen here. No matter how long this takes to build up and finally get to some sort of an agreement, I really do think this is going to happen, and everyone's going to watch it. And it's not going to live up to the hype, just like Pacquiao and Mayweather didn't. Obviously, if that fight were 5 years earlier, it would have been 20 times better because they'd both be in their primes. And
right.
We honestly might have had a really good fight. In the one a couple of years ago, we had Pacquiao way past his prime. Mayweather past his prime as well, but still in a lot better of a position and shape than Manny Pacquiao was, and he completely dominated him. I hope they get this done sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to strike while the iron's hot. And I think the iron is the hottest right now. The last, I guess you can say, 4 or 5 months, we've just had, like I said, this back and forth exchange where it's like, are you going to give me this? No. Well, I want this. Like, okay, we'll try and work this out, and then your guys will talk to mine, and etc. So I hope they get it done because I guess it'd be the one thing that boxing can kind of lean on right now, because the biggest star and the only star they had was Floyd Mayweather, and he's gone now. So boxing's basically on life support. If they were to get McGregor versus Mayweather, it might be only one fight, but it still gives someone a reason to watch boxing.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to happen. I hope it gets done sooner rather than later, though.
And he turns 40 on February 24th.
Yeah, well, so he'll they're not going to be fighting the next 10 days, so he'll be at least 40 years old.
Yeah.
So I think it'll happen, though. I really do. I'd say probably near the end of 2017. I'd say maybe October, November, December, they'll be fighting.
I'd say that or 2018, probably like mid 2018. I got it. I know when he does it. You want to know when he does it?
Go right ahead, buddy. I remember that Pacquiao and Mayweather did fight in May that year. I remember watching it. I watched it, and then I went to see the Avengers right after.
Nice. Mayweather has a history for this, of fighting not necessarily Mexican players, but just Latin people on Cinco de Mayo, just because he likes to race bait in that way. March 17th, or mid-March 2018.
So St. Patty's Day?
Yes.
Because obviously McGregor is from the Republic of Ireland.
Yes.
Could be interesting. And he'll come out in like green attire.
March 17th, 2018. That's going to be the fight.
Well, I mean, that would be kind of interesting. We'd have to wait and see.
That way you get a full year.
You heard it here first.
You get a full year to kind of like, prepare, whatever you want to call it. Let's say it gets announced, because you actually have like a month from now to announce it, and then you have a year to train. March 18th. Yeah.
You heard it here first from Anthony at the GSMC Sports Podcast. March 17, 2018. All right, so we'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk some NBA news. Kevin Love is going to be sidelined for about 6 weeks with a knee injury. And the Raptors pick up a big man who, quite honestly, could propel them past the Cavaliers come playoff time. We'll talk about that right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So Kevin Love is going to be out about 6 weeks after arthroscopic knee surgery on his left knee. They did win last night to the Cavaliers 116-108 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, Minnesota, one of the worst teams record-wise in the league, and they have some issues with the player with a knee injury themselves. Zach LaVine tore his ACL a couple weeks back. He's out for the rest of the year and probably into next year as well. But nevertheless, the Cavs did win last night. They, of course, also have J.R. Smith, who's out probably until about mid-March with the hand injury. So if you look at 6 weeks on the calendar, that gives Kevin Love till basically the beginning of April. So he's going to be missing roughly 20 games between now and April. Obviously missing the All-Star game this weekend as well, so they'll have to name some sort of replacement there. But so the Cavaliers are without Kevin Love now. They're already struggling. We talked about last week their struggles. Do you think this gives the other teams in the East a legit chance to pass the Cavs for the number 1 seed, Anthony?
Depends on what they do, right? Like if they kind of stay pat with what they do, if they say, in June, it's like, okay, well, we get Kevin Love back and we get J.R. Smith back and we get our whole squad back, with Richard Jefferson and Kyle Korver and everybody else, then I think there's at least a shot because you don't know if Kevin Love re-injures something, if J.R. Smith tweaks something else again. I think they at least have a shot, right? It's at least something that they're doing that makes it, at least a conversation, right? Be it Boston, be it Toronto, be it whoever. You at least have a conversation of, okay, maybe this is the first year in, this would be 7th straight year, because 4 straight in Miami and then 2 with Cleveland. Yeah, so this the first time in 7 years that they maybe don't make it to the finals, that a LeBron James team doesn't make it to the finals. At least gives them an opportunity. But if LeBron gets in the ear of the GM and basically says, hey, I want Carmelo Anthony to make this happen, whether it's trading Kevin Love or not, then I think it's a different story. Then I think you get your buddy who isn't exactly as good of a three-pointer and spacing as Kevin Love is, but it still can do a lot of other things. Then I think it's like, okay, cool, that's a wrap.
Well, I mean, if there's ever time to make a trade for Carmelo, I guess you could say it's right now because Kevin Love's sidelined for 6 weeks. You can technically still make the trade. I'm sure the Knicks would still be willing, given what Phil Jackson has been saying about Carmelo Anthony lately.
So much.
I'm sure they would still be willing to even explore a trade option there. Do you think they should do it then? I mean, I guess you can say obviously it'd be beneficial to them for the next 6 weeks, but a healthy Kevin Love or Carmelo Anthony, who would you choose? I would still go with Love because given Carmelo's history, he's not one of the best teammates. I mean, in his career, he's had 1 conference finals appearance.
Sure.
So he's not even gotten to the NBA finals. You have Kevin Love, who hasn't had the best relationship with LeBron and some of the teammates in his time in Cleveland, but still, he's still a really big piece to this team, and is still a contributor. They're basically the same player as far as the perimeter goes. Kevin Love gets more rebounds. I'd still stick with Love, though. But, I mean, if there is a time to trade for Melo, it's now, because Kevin Love's out for 6 weeks.
So, the other thing is, do you remember when they were talking about the Kevin Love trade, the Carmelo Anthony trade, and then they were also talking about the Clippers, how it was like, okay, well, we can put him in L.A., but we don't have to trade one of the big 3, right? We don't have to trade Blake. We don't have to trade DeAndre or Chris. Okay, so if you assume that same thing, why would that also go to Cleveland, right? Obviously, you're not going to trade LeBron because why?
Well, who are you going to trade to get Carmelo Anthony?
Everybody else. You say, all right, you want Tristan Thompson? Okay, you want Iman Shumpert? And also,
you'd give up Tristan Thompson?
I mean, here's the thing.
I think Tristan Thompson's probably more valuable to this team than Kevin Love is. Obviously, he's not going to put up the numbers, but as far as a interior threat...
Sure. But you got to give something, right?
Right, exactly. You'd have to give up something.
And they also have trade exceptions for someone like Mike Dunleavy, who's basically almost $5 million, and Anderson Varejao, who's basically $4.5 million. You have those things which actually helps the money and helps the math as far as actually getting this stuff taken care of, right? Because if you basically say all right, take Tristan, take Iman, take a couple other random people and take those expirings or the trade exception, then all of a sudden the numbers all of a sudden match up, and now you have the situation where you have Kyrie, LeBron, Melo, and Kevin Love,
and then you have you and I coming off the bench.
Sure, yes, fan night.
I mean, you
night.
You have the fan in section 118 coming off the bench.
One lucky fan gets to run the point
because you literally have no other player.
Yeah. So, in that case, at least then you have the 4, right? That's the thing with the Cavaliers, right? You have the 4 of Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, And now you have their 4, right? You have our 4 and your 4, which at that point, then all of a sudden, this league all of a sudden becomes much less, what do you want to call it? Much less intriguing because we just talked about, maybe Boston, maybe Toronto. If it's those 4, then it's like, okay, cool. The Eastern Conference is Cleveland. The Western Conference is probably Golden State. I say probably because who knows what Houston or San Antonio can do in a 7-game series, but probably Golden State.
And it's going to be really interesting. Quite honestly, I'm kind of excited for the playoffs this year. Mm-hmm. Normally I wouldn't be because at the start of the season, honestly, I would have told you there's 3 teams in my eyes that can win the title. Mm-hmm. San Antonio, Golden State, and Cleveland.
Right.
I honestly still feel that way. But as far as the Eastern Conference goes, I think it's going to get kind of exciting. Mm-hmm. You look at the standings right now. You have Cleveland, the first seed at 38-16. You have Boston 2.5 games behind them. You have Washington 5 games behind them, who, quite honestly, to me, are probably the most intriguing team in the East. We saw what happened a week ago with the overtime game when LeBron hit the turnaround 3 off the backboard.
Right.
And then you have Atlanta, who's I'm not really big on Atlanta. You have Toronto, who we'll get to in a minute after their trade yesterday. So I think the East could get kind of interesting. I feel like Boston could really push Cleveland, depending if they make a move or not at the trade deadline coming up at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. I feel like Washington's really good. Their backcourt is absolutely dynamic, and they're playing really well. They've won 9 out of their last 10. Same thing as the Celtics. And then you have Toronto, who we'll get to in a minute. You have LeBron James, who's second in the NBA in minutes. He's averaging over 39 minutes a game.
Right.
I realized LeBron came out yesterday and said, I'll rest when I'm retired. He's still a freak of nature physically. And I'm never going to bet against LeBron James, given his track record through his career. So I'm not going to go out and say that, one of these teams is going to upset Cleveland. But could he be tired come playoff time? Because he's literally having to do everything right now, kind of like the early days in Cleveland. I realize there's stars around him,
right,
but they're really banged up right now. And Kyrie's not really a playmaker. He's a scorer. He's a guy who has the ball in his hands. I mean, LeBron James is putting up more assists than Kyrie Irving is. So could it be something that he kind of wears down late and becomes tired because he's playing so many minutes? I mean, he's on pace to play over 3,000 minutes this year.
Right.
That's crazy for a guy who's 32 years old and is playing in his 14th season in the league. Not to mention he's added at least a few more seasons with playoff games.
Right. Yeah, that's the part is like the 32 years old, but the 14 years in the NBA plus, however many minutes he's played in the playoffs altogether. Yeah, that's the part that is kind of, scary, at least for LeBron James. I don't think he gets tired because I think LeBron's just kind of a freak of nature in that aspect. How many minutes does he play in the postseason? 83, almost 8,500 minutes, right? And in his career so far, the man has played basically a little over 40,000 minutes, right? And you look at this and you say, like, I don't think he gets hurt, right? I don't think he gets tired, right? I don't think he all of a sudden in Game 5, he just like looks really tired, kind of
doesn't have any cramps like in San Antonio.
Yeah, that's honestly the only thing that's ever happened to him is the cramps when they basically shut off the AC.
That's one thing I give LeBron James credit for is that given how physically built he is,
right,
he's never had any serious injury. Yeah, he's missed some time. Everyone misses a few games here and there, but he's never had any serious injury.
The one thing I would say though is you look at somebody like Kobe Bryant, right? And up until the point where Kobe Bryant was the king of the NBA, right? He basically, in the entirety of his career, had somewhere around 80, let's see here, 40.
He's doing some soul searching on the computer.
Well, no, because he had about 53,000 minutes, right? By the time his Achilles went boom, right? 53 to 55,000 minutes when his Achilles went boom. That's what Kobe Bryant was. LeBron, at this point right now, is basically 40,000 minutes regular season. And what would we say for the playoffs? Like 8,000? Yeah, 8,300. So he's about almost 50,000 career minutes right now. Like, he's not too far off if you take basically one more NBA season and one more playoff, assuming they go deep in the playoffs again. He's not that far off and basically hitting that point of no return, right? And it's not just Kobe that did it. You've seen a lot of players throughout history, basically, they go, and then bam, all of a sudden it's just like your body can't do this anymore because, like you said, he's been doing this for 14, 15 years after this is when he's going to get to that Kobe point. Your body can only go through so much before it's just like, look, man, like, we're tired, the joints don't work as well, the bones don't work anymore, like, we're going to break down. And he may not get tired, but like, you're kind of pushing this to the bad place.
And Father Time, I guess with the exception of Tom Brady right now,
Sure.
Father Time is unbeaten. So things are going to finally catch up to LeBron. But I'm not going to count him out. I mean, I literally can't count out LeBron James out of anything.
Sure.
But there is a team in the East that's making, in my opinion, a really, really good move yesterday, and that was the Toronto Raptors. So the Toronto Raptors have acquired big man Serge Ibaka, formerly of the Orlando Magic, and then before that of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they have acquired him for Terrence Ross and a 2017 first-round pick. Mm-hmm. So you add Serge Ibaka to that dynamic backcourt of DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. I think that's a really, really good move. Serge Ibaka, basically a stretch four now, gets a lot of rebounds, a good defender as well, can get some blocks in there, kind of be a rim protector at times for Toronto, who are currently fifth in the Eastern Conference, just behind the Atlanta Hawks. But I would give them probably with the move, I'd say they're up there with Boston and up there with Washington right now as legit challengers to Cleveland in the East.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely, with this move, it helps them out, gives them some version of a big three. I don't know how big of a three it is, but you got Lowry, DeRozan, and now you got Ibaka. It's something that you have to focus on because you said now he's kind of stretched four. He has 83 three-pointers this season, and he kind of slowly started trending that way. And I feel kind of bad for him because he was such an integral part of that Thunder team when it was him, Westbrook, and Durant, and Harden at one time.
Orlando.
And then Orlando just, God, that's a dumpster fire. Like, you know, there are bad teams in the NBA, but Orlando just keeps doing dumb move after dumb move. Like,
I was going to get to that because if you basically combine these two big trades they've been involved in.
Right.
They basically traded for Terrence Ross and gave up Victor Oladipo
right.
and the number 11 pick and Ersan Ilyasova.
Yeah.
Like, that's
bad.
Absolutely terrible.
Well, not just that, but the fact that you got Serge Ibaka, last year. Okay, cool. I get that. Like, you want to get Serge Ibaka, but you also had Bismack Biyombo. You also had Aaron Gordon. You had these people who are big men in the NBA, and it's not like it's 1985 where you can play all these big men and you can basically survive in the NBA. Like, this isn't the Celtics of the 80s. This isn't the Pistons. This isn't something like that where you have all these big men that can kind of hang. Basically, the NBA plays one big man. You talked about how important Tristan Thompson was in his role in the team because he's the one big guy that basically takes care of all the defense and rebounds and stretching and stuff like that to, like, accommodate for things like that. But you don't play two or three of them. You play one of them. So now he's gone. You still got Biyombo there. Aaron Gordon, they're going to have him at 4. So you have all these things, still all these moving parts in Orlando. You had Oladipo, who looks like he's a solid enough player in OKC. You still got Elfrid Payton, who can't shoot. You got Aaron Gordon, who might be a good player, might not be. I don't know. Like, you have all these weird random pieces that don't necessarily match. Now you just get rid of Ibaka, and he goes to Toronto. Now Toronto has, like I said, some version of a big three, but they at least have something now. They at least have these three guys to at least try against Cleveland. And you at least give them that. They're at least trying to do something, right? Trying to make it to the finals for the first time ever because they went to conference finals last year. They're at least trying to get there. So now you have them in Boston. It's at least something to at least give Cleveland pause and maybe make Cleveland try and actually do something to get, like I said, Carmelo or someone like that.
Yeah, Toronto have I call them like a big two and a lot of good players. I think
Sure.
Damari Carroll's a good player. Mm-hmm. I think Serge Ibaka is a good player. He's averaging 15.7 rebounds practically for Orlando this season. Mm-hmm. And I think Jonas Valanciunas is a good player. Mm-hmm. So you have basically the two all-stars in Lowry and DeRozan. You have a lot of good players around them.
Yeah.
They already were in the conference finals last year. I feel like they're probably a better team with this trade if Ibaka can fit in and really find his role. Mm-hmm. I feel like they'll be a better team this year than they were last year, although I think others around them are better, as I mentioned, Washington and Boston. Mm-hmm. So it could get interesting. Honestly, I feel like the Warriors probably have an easier road to the finals than Cleveland do right now because you have to mix J.R. Smith back in March.
Sure.
You have to mix Kevin Love back in April. And there's no guarantee that all that's going to mesh well. There's no guarantee that you're not going to have even more pieces missing come playoff time with injuries. Kyrie Irving has had injury issues in the past. So, there's no guarantee that everything's going to fit well and everyone's going to be healthy and everything is back to where it was last year because that could not be the case.
Right.
And the others around you are getting better and are definitely not kind of like shying away from trying to topple you because LeBron's going for 7 years in a row in the finals now between Cleveland and Miami.
Right.
So it's going to get interesting, and quite honestly, I'm kind of excited for the playoffs. if the season were to end right now, which I normally wouldn't be, because you'd imagine it would just be, Cleveland and Golden State. But I don't think that is necessarily the case right now.
The funny thing is like, we basically, and I've heard other people talk about this, it's basically, we know what's going to happen in the beginning of the season, right? In the beginning of the season, we would have said, okay, OKC, they're going to be worse. San Antonio, they're going to be good. Boston, they'll probably be good. But the finals are going to be Golden State and Cleveland. And all it is throughout the regular season, it's just like small little subplots. They're like, oh, maybe this happens. Oh, maybe this happens. Oh, maybe this happens. No, never mind. It's Golden State and Cleveland, which would probably be the case. But at least, like you said, right now we have some doubt in our mind.
Exactly, and the trade deadline is February 23rd. We'll have to see if any teams make moves. I feel like if Boston had maybe a rim protector, they'll be even better than they already are. They already have a lot of good players, Isaiah Thomas being one of them. And then you have Washington, who are just really, really good. I mean, Otto Porter's leading the league in three-point percentage right now. John Wall's having his best season of his career, as is Bradley Beal as well. Then you have out there in the West, Golden State kind of look untouchable, but San Antonio still really good, have a lot of good leadership. And then Houston are kind of the, I guess you can say, the dark horse there because of how well they shoot the three.
Right.
And if they get hot in a postseason series, they could honestly beat anyone. You saw the Nuggets blow out the Warriors a couple nights ago because they made 24 threes in a game. Houston's capable of doing that every single night.
Yeah.
So it could get kind of interesting, and honestly, I'm looking forward to this summer with the postseason in the NBA. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk some football news. Today is the first day that teams can sign players on the franchise tag. We'll talk about the franchise tag, who we think is going to go on there. And Anthony, you have a little Jim Harbaugh story that, quite honestly, is typical Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, yep.
And we'll talk about that right after the break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So today is, I guess, you can kind of say the start of some sort of NFL free agency because you can technically put players on the franchise tag, which is a one-year deal, and it's the average of the top 5 salaries per position. So if you're looking at like some of these guys who might be franchise tagged are like Eric Berry of the Chiefs. Although he said he won't play under the franchise tag this year, the Chiefs could have other options. So say they were to put Berry on the franchise tag, they would average out the top 5 salaries for safeties, and that's what Berry will be making for the 1 year. So he was on the tag last year. He already came out and said he does not want to be on it this year. I think they should honestly pay him given last year because he was coming back from the cancer, and last year he proved that he's obviously healthy and a top player again. So I think they should give him the money, but obviously it's a little different. Teams have kind of different ideas as far as what they have in mind. Kirk Cousins on the franchise tag last year could quite honestly be it again this year. So some of the other guys who I think will probably get tagged, you look at Le'Veon Bell in Pittsburgh, they've already come out and said that they want to get Antonio Brown signed long-term. So they are, in my eyes, kind of valuing Brown higher than Bell. And they have their own issues to sort out with because I think Roethlisberger will come back. I think he's obviously just taking his time. But there are still some doubts in there that he could be retired. So if you don't have a quarterback, a legendary quarterback anymore, what do you do as far as your stud wide receiver? For me, I think Bell would be more important at that regard, but you have to still have some belief that Roethlisberger's coming back. Some of these other guys, possibly Kawan Short of Carolina, he's a defensive tackle. Some guys, maybe even Terrell Pryor from Cleveland, had a good year last year, really because in my eyes, there's really no one else there to throw the ball to. He could get tagged, and that would give him about a $15 million contract this year, which would be really good for a guy who was playing quarterback a few years ago.
Right.
So, is there any, bold predictions as far as who we think is going to get tagged or not get tagged or what? Everything is kind of still up in the air. Everything still kind of is decided by these teams whether they want to tag people or not. And we saw what happened last year. Von Miller was holding out because he didn't want to play under the tag, and then they finally got things done. So it's kind of like if these guys maybe hold out, the team will finally kind of cave in and give you a long-term deal. Do we think anyone's going to really do that?
Well, the only difference, with someone like a Von Miller or basically maybe Kirk Cousins is that you have the situation where, Von Miller was obviously super, super important to that defense, Super Bowl MVP, and Kirk Cousins is a quarterback. So basically, if he doesn't want to play and he makes a big enough stink, like that matters enough to where the team's like, oh, okay, cool, fine, maybe we don't do it. But everything else, like all the other people you want to talk about, all the people that are on that like franchise list or whatever, like Le'Veon Bell is obviously super important to the team, but so is Antonio Brown. And if they value him more than Bell, and Bell's had as much as you whether think it's justified or not, has had the off the field issues where it's limited in the amount of games he's played, and he may not get the franchise tag after this. He might get suspended again. Then you got all the other issues. You got the situation over in Atlanta or in Arizona with Chandler Jones. He might get franchise tagged. He had some weird issues before. Was it before this year or was it before last year? Like he had the situation where he got basically popped for. He showed up at a police station. He was acting really strange. Like he had a whole situation over there too. So there's a couple different people who are kind of up in the air. The only ones that you said can hold out and basically not want to do it. The only one I can see on there would be Kirk Cousins. He's the only one that would do it and have an actual beef. As good as Eric Berry is, if they say no, we're going to put you on a franchise tag, he can put as much of a stink as he wants to. It's not going to change the outcome whether it should or shouldn't. The only other one that I can see them maybe franchise, I can see them doing it to Pryor, because Pryor they may say all right, we're going to pay you this right now, but we're only going to do it for a year because we don't know if you can keep this up. We don't know if you can do this year 2, 3, year 4. Yeah, you can do it for a year. But once NFL defenses kind of figure out, oh, okay, cool, you're the only one that can actually catch the ball. All right, we're going to take you away and see if you can do it the next year.
Right, and call me crazy, but the Browns will be better than they were last year. They won one game. They have to win at least 2, right?
That bar is very low.
I mean, they have to win at least 2 next year. So call me crazy, but the Browns will be better next year. I think the one that is most intriguing to me here is Alshon Jeffrey with Chicago.
Right.
Because Alshon Jeffrey has had his injury issues of past. He was suspended 4 games last year for PEDs. He's a guy who's got a lot of potential and has shown that he could be a very good receiver in this league, but he simply just cannot stay healthy. I mean, last 2 years he's missed 11 games. So you have 32 games there. He's missed 11. He's missed almost half of those last 2 years with injury and suspensions.
Yep.
So he's a guy who's good, but can't stay healthy. So will the Bears make the decision to franchise tag him or not? Because if they don't, he's gone. I guarantee he's leaving. No one wants to be in Chicago right now.
Right.
So he's going to leave unless they franchise tag him. But do they want to pay him roughly $17.5 million for a second consecutive year? Because he was on the tag last year. Do they want to do that again for a guy who might not be healthy or might be suspended again, or something going on with him, who might not even be on the team? And they're they're definitely in a rebuilding mode because they're just not a good franchise right now. So that's the one who kind of sparks the most interest to me as far as what happens there. But you're right, as far as Cousins go, for me, if I was a player, I'd be upset with getting put on the tag for a second consecutive year.
Right.
Because it's 1 year I get it. Like with Kirk Cousins last year, it was almost like he was interviewing for the starting quarterback job for a year.
Right.
Because it's oh, you did great 2 years ago. We were in the playoffs with you. But we're not really sure if you're a $100 million guy or not, because that's what quarterbacks are getting now. So we're going to put you on the tag for 1 year for, call it $20 million. See how you do. I realized the Redskins kind of went through some growing pains last year. But Kirk Cousins, to me, was fantastic. And he's a really, really good quarterback. I'd say he's above average in the NFL. So I would give him a contract. You already proved yourself last year. And my mindset would be, I proved myself last year. Give me what I deserve now. And I would be upset with getting put on the tag for a second consecutive year. Kind of like Eric Berry, who already came out and said he does not want to do that, and he would kind of take it personal. You have Kirk Cousins there, so I don't like how you can, because honestly, you can put people on a tag practically every year, year after year after year, because there's always these different kind of franchise tags. One of them is a preliminary one, then you have these other ones that develop and go on.
Right.
So you could be on the franchise tag for 3-4 years in a row. And it's geez, can I actually get paid long term, please.
I think at a certain point, though, the amount of times you're on a franchise tag, the price goes up more and more.
Right, because every year the salary for these top 5 players is going to go higher because it seems like contracts in sports really are just like rings on a ladder. It's like this guy gets paid, and then this guy has to get more, and then this guy has to get more,
right?
And it just keeps going up and up and up.
Yeah, and at least for a quarterback, you talk about the price going up and up. The quarterback price is the highest, and if you keep having to get every year a little bit more with the franchise tag, eventually Kirk Cousins is going to get a whole lot of money to where they're just like, all right, never mind, like we don't want to do this, and he doesn't want to keep just playing on a 1-year contract because if he tears his ACL, then all of a sudden he's not the same guy.
Exactly.
So yeah, all these people that are trying to get the money and basically because the franchise tag, I get it on some level. It's just like, hey, we're paying you a lot of money. You're the top 5 average. Of the people in your position, you're one of the highest paid people in the league. Yes. Also, if I tear an ACL, then all of it goes away, and it doesn't matter. I don't have security past this 1 year. Like it is a lot of money, but also like it's for 1 year. Like you basically hit the lottery for 1 year, and you want to hit the lottery for 3, 4, 5 years.
It's going to be interesting. This is, of course, the start of the franchise tag, I guess you can say, period. Mm-hmm. We'll keep you updated here. I mean, we've already got NFL news on Monday. The Giants release Victor Cruz and Rashad Jennings. You have the draft coming up, more players potentially being released, like maybe Adrian Peterson in Minnesota. Right. So
Brandon Marshall might get it in Darrell Rivas at the Jets.
Exactly, and honestly, I'll take Brandon Marshall in Green Bay. I think he's still fantastic. Yeah. I think, honestly, he was just in a system that was a nightmare last year, and they didn't have a quarterback. But I would still love to take him as a part of the Packers. But we don't necessarily do things in free agency for the most part. So,
well, Aaron Rodgers yelled at you guys, basically, said you need to basically do something, and if he's yelling at you, maybe they listen to him.
Well, I mean, Jared Cook was good last year when healthy. We saw the impact he had in the playoffs.
Right.
Julius Peppers has been there a couple of years now, and he's obviously aging, but when they first brought him in, he was okay. Mm-hmm. And I guess you can say the biggest free agent the Packers have ever signed was Charles Woodson, who worked out. He was the Defensive Player of the Year and helped them win a Super Bowl.
Reggie White, too.
Yeah, but that was like...
That was the very beginning.
Before a lot of basically the Packers' current trends. So
right.
It's a little different now under Ted Thompson. But we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, it is free agency coming up. You have the draft, and then right before you know it, you have OTAs and training camp. So the NFL season is obviously over, but it's kind of not because it seems like every day you have something coming out in the world of football. But
exactly.
Anyways, before we end the show, Anthony, you were talking to me during one of the breaks about something that Jim Harbaugh did. And quite honestly, I teased it in the first part of the show. I was like, this is just typical Harbaugh. And like typical like elite college football coach is they find a way to like find all the nicks and crannies in everything. So what did Harbaugh do now?
So we saw earlier this year, Nick Saban basically had a thing where he's taken old running backs, Melvin Ingram, and he basically is like, okay, cool. So you're going to be in our practice, and we're going to have our guys go against you to basically help them prepare.
Right. They had Blake Sims, who's a quarterback there, and they had Trent Richardson. So both of them not in the NFL,
right.
But
that's who it was.
Basically hires them to work on the scout team to get his team better prepared because they're, I guess you can say, with Richardson's regard, was in the NFL. So NFL caliber players.
Right, and I get it. If you got it, flaunt it. If you want to basically have the defensive backs go against someone like a Julio Jones because he played for you, I get it. That's fine. Seems a little shady, but...
surprisingly, it's not like against the rules.
Right, it's not against the rules, and it does help the kind of more established teams in the NFL or in college. Like it helps Alabama, it helps Michigan, it helps Ohio State, it helps people like that. Seems weird, but it's legal. So you have that end, and now, like I just talked about Michigan, you have Jim Harbaugh, who's always down to basically say, like, okay, what exactly does a rule say? Okay, so it doesn't say I can't do that? Okay, cool, I'm going to do that. So basically, Michael Johnson, who was, I should say, a coach, has a really talented son who's a quarterback, and, a class of 2019, Michael Johnson Jr., coveted quarterback recruit. He's offered from a bunch of schools like FSU, Louisville, West Virginia. Well, Harbaugh's like, maybe I want to sign him. Okay, I'm just going to sign your dad. He's going to be on my staff now. Now Michael Johnson's on the staff, and, it's one of those things where that's not illegal, although that seems a lot more illegal than it probably should be. Like, it's some of those things where it's just like, I can just hire your whole family. Like, Reggie Bush couldn't help his mom buy a house, but you can basically, if USC would have hired his mom, it would have been a legal thing, which seems like a really strange thing. Like, Reggie Bush couldn't get the money to basically buy his mom a house, but if Pete Carroll had basically decided to hire Reggie Bush's mom as some like NFL consultant or whatever, it would have been totally legal. So Harbaugh's basically like, okay, I'm going to hire him. He's going to be an assistant coach on the team, and it's going to help us maybe get one of the top quarterback prospects in, all of high school football.
I mean, like I said, typical Harbaugh. It's like, it's okay. So you have like the elite college football coaches. Yep. I'll say Saban, I'll say Meyer, and I'll say Harbaugh are the three that come to mind immediately.
Right.
I think Dabo Swinney's really good and underrated. I think Jimbo Fisher's good and really talented. But it seems like these three are kind of like a step ahead of the game. It's like they're one step ahead of everyone. They know the rule book teeth and nail because they, of course, don't want to get in trouble for it. They're going to do everything they can to, I guess you can say, not tamper with it, but find all the little crevices in it.
Is my boy Lincoln not high on that list?
Well, I mean, as far as doing that, but I wouldn't call him an elite coach.
No.
We'll see how he does with FAU. But so it's like, I'm going to hire your dad, who used to be a coach, and I'll keep him on the staff at least until I know you're going to sign here and maybe even graduate because you could be a good quarterback prospect, and then I'll probably be done with him.
It's just, I don't, like, I understand why he did it, and it's on one level totally ingenious. Like, on one level, it's totally great. Like, it's also one of those things that's just like, who thinks, like, why did you, okay. Like, who thinks about these things? Just like, I want to sign this coach, or I want to sign this quarterback. Okay, what's the best way to do it? I mean, you can hire his dad. That's not illegal. Okay, how much do you want? How's $1 million sound? Okay. And now all of a sudden I don't know if he signed for $1 million. I'm just saying, like, now all of a sudden he's a coach of the team. Like, it's just one of those things where it's just like, you see these rules. Like, I saw, I think it was Lane back in probably like 2010 or something like that when he was a coach at, I think it was for Tennessee or USC. He would take the jerseys of the players and swap them out. Like, he would take the quarterback's jersey and he would take the running back's jersey or the kicker's jersey, something like that, and he would flip it. So that way you couldn't tell who 35 was. So 35 might have been the quarterback, 35 might have been the running back, and all of a sudden you totally flustered the other coach into not knowing what was happening, and that's not illegal. It's just, why are you doing that? Like, can you just, like, play by the rules a little bit? Like, I understand you're playing by the rules, but can you at least just, like, make it look like you're playing by the rules a little bit more? It's one of those rules. It's weird, and this is one of those things just, like, I don't think you can just basically hire every single dad, every single uncle, every single whatever of, like, one of the best players, one of the best prospects in the NFL or in high school football, because that only helps out the big programs, right? That only helps out Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, stuff like that. It doesn't help out, FAU, right? FAU doesn't have the funds to do that, but Alabama's like, oh, what, you need more money? All right, cool, here's more money.
It's like them in Texas have more money than anybody, and they are not afraid to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see how Texas go under Tom Herman now, and I think that's honestly a good hire, but it's a lot more on his plate at Texas than it was at Houston. So he's gonna have a lot to work with, and honestly, in college in particular, the alumni and the boosters, they're not really as patient as, in my eyes, they probably should be. But
sure.
They have a history, and they expect you to live up to it. And if you're not, then you're kind of ousted. I mean, coaches last sometimes not even that, 2 years at the most. So, I mean, you saw what happened with Charlie Strong at Texas, and he was bounced already. So, it's going to be interesting to see. But, I mean, some of these guys are just a step ahead of the others, and they just find every little way to get players in, which is honestly what you have to do in college. The head coach is the GM, he's the president, he's the director of personnel, he's everything. And, I mean, that's what they have to do. So, interesting little story there, Anthony. But we're going to end the show here today. This is us signing off here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. My name is Ben.
Hey, I'm Anthony.
We'll see you guys next time. You'll be in the studio tomorrow as well with Pauline, and then I will be here back with you on Friday. So, we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's it for today, guys. Have a good day, and we'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes. Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.